You made the claim that 2
I
plus 2 is eternal, Jack. Did you not say that 2 plus 2 is eternal? That was your claim, Jack, was it not?
Yes. My claim
Okay,
is
when you back that up, when you back
is
that
a
claim,
timeless truth.
are you talking about the claim that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is eternal?
Yeah.
I'll say it this way. You cannot justify where 2 plus 2 equals 4 resides when there are no minds. We've already come to the conclusion, Jack, that you can't justify where 2 plus 2 equals 4 comes from.
No, I didn't say that.
Can you justify where 2 plus 2 equals 4 comes from, where it resides?
As I said, I don't think that it can reside anywhere.
Well, we can get back to the original discussion on 2 plus 2 equals 4, or a proposition in general.
If you like.
That is timeless, that is eternal, the proposition itself is eternal.
What do you really believe, Jack?
I think the proposition that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is timelessly true.
Okay, and how can you justify that?
It seems to me that the point in contention is whether that proposition could be a necessary truth apart from being in a mind. And I offered an objection to the fact that it could be understood to be a conceptual truth rather than a non-conceptual truth. And that's the reason why I think that it...
And what's a concept?
The content of a thought.
Okay, and where do thoughts reside?
Thoughts reside in minds.
Okay, and so how can you have a concept exist outside of a mind? The content of thoughts, if the content originated from thoughts, how does a concept of a thought exist outside of a thought?
The idea is that two people can share the same content of their thoughts.
Okay, so when people don't exist, where does the content of a thought exist?
It doesn't have a spatial location.
Okay, but again, it has to have some mind for it to be derived.
I don't see the argument for that.
I understand you don't see it.
Well, if you'd like to give the argument, go ahead.
You just said the concept is the content of a thought. So without a thought, how does a thought exist without a mind? Let's go more simplistic.
I didn't say that thoughts exist without mind.
Okay, well then we're talking about the content of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how does the content of a thought exist without a thought? Concepts are content of a thought.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that you don't have to have a mind for a concept to exist.
That's right.
But if a thought requires a mind,
mm-hmm.
how can you have the content of a thought without a mind to think?
Are you saying there's a contradiction that's entailed by that?
Oh, I'm saying you're absolutely absurd.
What's the argument?
It's not an argument. It is an objection to what you asserted.
He said the claim was absurd, so let's just get that clear.
Jack, you said that a concept is the content of a thought.
Right.
Okay, so a thought necessitates a mind.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm asking you is how can a concept, which is the result of a thought, of a mind, exist without a mind?
Mm-hmm.
So we just have random floating concepts.
There can be concepts without thoughts, yes.
Justify that.
Well, wait a minute. Did you say that the view was absurd?
Oh, I already told you you're absurd.
Sure, intuitively, that it seems highly likely that concepts reside in minds.
Yeah, I would say it's intuitive.
So in the light of that, can you give any case to think otherwise?
Well, do you recall what I said about an infinite regress?
I'd like to hear it now.
So if in fact the contents of thoughts are themselves thought and a belief that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a thought, and the content of thought is the proposition that 2 plus 2 equals 4, that itself is a thought. But each content of each thought is itself the thought of the same content. Right? That's the objection.
Even still, I don't see a problem. It's not like they're sequential.
Your view is that propositions are thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So 2 plus 2 equals 4 is one thought, right?
Correct.
Is the content that 2 plus 2 equals 4 the thought that 2 plus 2 equals 4?
I don't actually distinguish between concepts and thoughts.
You think that believing that it is raining outside is the same thing as the proposition that it's raining outside?
No.
I'm just trying to get it straight.
You said concept or content of thought.
That's correct.
Okay, and so without a thought, can you have concept? If it's the content of a thought.
What I said was that the contents of thoughts are concepts. That means that you cannot have a thought without having a content. That doesn't follow from that fact. Content is a thought.
If everything that is a thought, the content of a thought is a concept, how do you distinguish between the two, is what we're asking.
Yes.
I take it that you distinguish between the two. The proposition that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is distinct from the attitude that one has towards that proposition.
Well, nobody objects to that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to address. So whether it's true or false?
You believe it to be true, if you desire it to be true. I'm just asking you whether you think that a propositional attitude is identical to the content of the proposition that one has an attitude towards. You do distinguish between intentional contents and intentional states, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I take it now that your view is that the proposition that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is actually a thought. That's the claim.
Hold on. Do you believe that 2 plus 2 is the content of a thought?
Yeah.
If it seems like I don't care, it's because, honestly, I don't care. I don't have a problem with, so I think 1 plus 1 equals 2, and you just go on infinite.
The problem is that it's vicious.
Huh?
The problem is that the regress is vicious.
Well, after a conversation with you, I feel like I may have been on something.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sure the arguments will be forthcoming.
How about the infinite regression argument? You were going to make that against God with 2 plus 2 and it being a belief of his?
I asked if it was the case that God believed that 2 plus 2 equals 4.
That is an object of his knowledge.
So God does believe that 2 plus 2 equals 4?
I don't think he believes it equals 6.
Now, is 2 plus 2 equals 4, is that proposition the belief that God has that 2 plus 2 equals 4?
Okay, what are you going to say?
I'm saying that on your view, what the proposition 2 plus 2 equals 4 is, constitutively, is the belief that God has that 2 plus 2 equals 4. And God has the belief that 2 plus 2 equals 4, the content of which is 2 plus 2 equals 4. But since constitutively that content, that proposition, is God's belief that 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? You're saying that God's belief that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is the belief that God believes that 2 plus 2 equals 4.
Well, thank you for your view.